Kick ass, man.
Well, I'm new to being on camera, but I'm here with Farmtruck and AZN, who are obviously we're not so shy about it. Yeah. And not to state the obvious, but you are very obviously Asian and you're Farmtruck.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure. Good to meet you, brother.
Thank you, guys. So anyway, roles are reversed. We were talking before we started here what I knew about Oklahoma City street racing was back in the day, the 39th Strip.
Yeah.
Is that where you guys met or started, or how did this union begin?
That's where it all happened, right there. Route 66, or we call it 39th Street.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It just runs through the heart of the middle of Oklahoma City. You know, it kind of is the PB&J of the South and the North right there, right? And so all the car guys would just find there's more too. You know, you can have more, but that's way down there, man. So 39th was the good divide for all of us to just kind of hit that river, you know, that asphalt river, and cruise up and down it and figure out what you're made of.
Well, you know, there was 59th Street back in the day, and there was 12th Street and more, but what 39th Street offered was 6 lanes, also plenty of parking. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those people from all the towns came to 39th Street.
Absolutely. You know, every time I drive by, I remember that parking lot at 39th and Portland.
Yeah.
Seemed kind of like the staging area.
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
Where we used to go buy concert tickets too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My God, this city. Now we're dating ourselves.
Yeah.
We've been around a while. I remember being out there. I must have been kind of 97 and 99 range. Sure. When did you guys start getting involved in the racing world?
Yeah, I was probably early 2000s.
I was probably somewhere around 1970. 1972.
Okay. So more of the, the old Vanishing Point.
I've been around a minute.
Yeah, but he got to see technology improve, you know, to the degree where it was like, you know, you only had 3 choices of wheels. Whereas, you know, now he was like, oh, okay, I can see where this is going. And he had his finger on the pulse of it for a while. Whereas me, I was just getting my start, right? Where I had, you know, the luxury of having all these aftermarket automotive parts in a Jegs magazine.
Yeah.
Right. And so he didn't have as much of that. So he was definitely a kid in a candy store at that point.
I had the muscle cars in our neighborhood, and my brother, he had friends with muscle cars, and that's all I wanted to do was hang around those cars. We'd be riding our bikes through the neighborhood, and a guy would be out working on his Mustang, and I would stop and start talking to him, and my friends they'd look at the car for 3 to 5 minutes, and then, hey, let's go. And I'm like, I'm staying right here. And I was just attracted to it for some reason.
Fair. Were you born and raised in OKC too?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 OKC lifers here at the table.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And why the truck? I have to say, I don't know. I grew up on monster truck rallies and demolition derbies. And so for me, the excitement is seeing some of the ridiculous vehicles you work on, but obviously it's where your namesake comes from. Did you just like taking the long road and adopting a challenge there?
Well, I never really thought about building a fast car or a fast truck. I just wanted to build something that people didn't think was fast. I wanted a sleeper. In the 8th grade, there was a kid telling me about this car that his friend had that was a complete sleeper, and it beat everybody over on 59th Street. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do. And then a few months later, I went to a Darryl Starbird car show down at the Myriad Convention Center in Oklahoma City. And I saw a truck, and it was called Daddy's Dream. It was a Ford truck. And it was one of those moments, you know, that struck me, and it's going to be a truck. This is what I'm going to build someday. I'm going to build a sleeper truck. And that's where it all happened. I was about 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
So
what year did you actually start working on cars to give us kind of a...
Well, I tinkered when I was a kid. You know, my dad would send me out to pull the transmission out of his truck. And, you know, whenever I got all the bolts out of it, he'd come out there and help me get it on the ground. So pretty much all my life, I was taking things apart and putting them back together.
So this is just in your blood.
Yeah, I guess.
Or
You know,
at least a full life history of it.
yeah.
Being raised around it. See, my knowledge of cars only comes from being poor and driving 90s Japanese sedans. So just me and the Chilton in the driveway.
Yeah,
that's right.
All
Yeah.
right,
And
this is how
I was
do it."
there, you know,
Yeah.
same thing. You when in doubt, figure it out.
You know, and obviously with the way things are going and almost full electric, I finally bought my, you know, first new car in my life and opened up the hood and I'm like, I don't know where to begin here. You guys,
Right.
I mean,
Did you buy an electric one?
I did not. I did
Okay.
not. All right, let's talk
All right.
about that. I mean, I literally went through a post last night of the pros and cons of people
I'm just not
arguing
ready
about
for that.
electric.
You know,
Is it the sound and the fury?
no, I think it's just driving cross country. I want to go where I want to go. And, you know, we've got our cars ready to go, you know, kind of like our horses, you know, saddle up and go. But I just don't think the charging stations are all there.
Okay.
And I don't know that much about them. I just know that if you drive like the way I do, you'll get about 2 hours of battery.
Right.
So,
And that's kind of what I'm wondering. You mentioned going from horses to
Right.
gas stations.
yeah.
And now, yeah, there's the infrastructure. They're still building it. Plus, I don't know. I've ridden in a Tesla and they still weird me out. Like I'm used to at least hearing something, or if you push the gas, like knowing you can hear the sound of the motor before it starts to pull. And in that, it's just, you feel like you're gliding around.
And it does feel kind of strange, but we've driven a Tesla and they are awesome
Oh, man.
Yeah.
as far as acceleration goes. They
Yeah.
are amazing.
The human brain doesn't care how you're getting pushed forward, you
Fair.
know? And so, I mean, whether it's a rocket ship or you're falling out of an airplane, you know, that's going to be fast. And so we actually built one on the show. We built a full electric drag vehicle.
Really?
And that really taught us that it's not time yet. Right.
Uh-huh.
Like it's just being able to go hands deep into it and talk to all the nerds locally, vocationally. We dived in as far as we could financially with the backing of a network type money.
Yeah.
And it's just not there yet. It's you can have all the motor technology, the speed control technology, you can build the car. The batteries, it's the batteries. And, you know, we're not going to dive deep into the, you know, molecular structure of lithium ion, but we don't have it. There's not enough of it and it's too expensive. And the regular Joe like you, I, and Farm or anybody listening just can't go out to the store and buy that. And until that happens, just don't see it catching on. But now, factory produced electric cars, sure, go for it, man. If that's your thing. But I'm kind of with Farm. I think it's too soon.
It seems like very quickly there has been that paradigm shift.
Yeah.
As you started seeing Teslas mass produced, then all of the major manufacturers have jumped on board. And
Sure.
I didn't realize it looks like Ford is producing an electric pickup now.
Sure, yeah, that's right.
Right.
And like you said, like with a charge, I'm like, there's a part of my brain, I guess, you know, that's been based around combustion engines that just
Right.
can't imagine a semi running on an electric charge.
Sure, yeah.
You know,
Right.
it's like how much can a tractor trailer pull based on a battery? But,
Yeah.
you know, again, I think it just comes down to changing. But as you said, when building one, aren't those batteries also can be extremely dangerous to
Yeah,
work
they
on?
can.
We
Yeah.
figured that out too.
Yeah. They are, and you have to have a special fire extinguisher. You have to know what happens when they completely catch on fire, and some of that fire is invisible and a lot like methanol, and they can explode. And yeah, the voltage and the watts that are running through them, definitely everybody involved in that vehicle has to know what's going on. And again, you know, you buy a factory Tesla, you're not going to have any of those issues. It's when you start dabbling. But I think that aftermarket is always what feeds an industry, right? Whether it's music with guitars and changing the strings, or podcasting and choosing what mics you want to use and what cameras you want. All of it feeds on aftermarket first. And then you get to be force fed what they want to give you, right? So, but the aftermarket isn't strong enough yet.
Okay. Well, speaking of aftermarket, I've seen your newest toy that you guys have been tooling around the country in, the green lizard.
Oh yeah.
That is rad. How did that come about? And did how does one go about getting a decommissioned prison bus?
Well, one of my favorite places to go is a salvage yard.
Uh-huh.
And you can get a car guy can get a lot of inspiration just by walking through. There was a salvage yard on the east side of town on 23rd Street. And I walked through there, and here's this prison bus that's pretty much a shell. The rear end's no good. The front end's no good. It had originally a 6-cylinder, a 292 6-cylinder in it, but it was all there. And I thought, this would be a cool build if we got this thing and built it and got it going. And that's exactly what we did. We went to a school bus auction in Moore, Oklahoma, and we bought a short bus, which was kind of a medium bus. It was a Freightliner with a Cummins and an Allison, and we did a frame off. We took the yellow bus and scrapped it, and then we took the 1960 prison bus and put it down on the modern chassis. And now we're able to go cross country with that thing, coast to coast. It's quite surprising that it makes it as far as it makes it, because Asian and I built it.
Yeah, it's not going to go. We've had a lot of help. But.
There. How many miles to the gallon does that thing get?
It gets right at 10.
10.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is great. Now, I could get over 10 if I would drive 65, but I drive 85, 90, and we get about 10. So. And
you're traveling around the country with that?
Yeah, we travel around. We do all these no preps. It's a Discovery Channel show, and there's a spinoff show on that's called Locals Only, and Asian and I were the hosts of that. And we get a bunch of grassroots racers. We get 8 of them, 8 locals. We let them battle it out for $5,000, and then they get a chance to race a Street Outlaw for another $5,000 with negotiations.
Wow!
So it's a pretty cool show.
I saw you guys. Go ahead.
We get to shine the spotlight on the grassroots guys, and it's an honor to get to do that.
Yeah, I was about to say, now that you guys, I mean, you're kind of the royalty of this now. You guys are the faces of all of this. What's it like coming in and seeing this newer generation coming in and doing the same things?
Of street racing?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that they're going to ultimately take over, right? I think that we're now facing our own mortality, right? With that, with that career, I think that you can only go so hard and spend all of your money, right? You eventually mature, grow up, and be like, oh, you got kids, or you got a house payment, you got all these additional responsibilities that take away from the fact that, oh, I should, that was fun, but now I gotta do life, and so. I think the newer generation is going really hard, and with aftermarket support and with the fact that the cars are just going faster and faster and the competition's thick, and Oklahoma's kind of been a test bed for that. I think they're going to take over, right? And I think that we don't even see yet what they're doing with these vehicles and how fast they're making them.
Don't mistake us for the fast guys, because we're not, Well, we were the guys that wanted to build something cool. And a lot of people assume that we are the fast guys, but when you're focusing on making a TV show and building the things that we've built, being fast kind of gets pushed to the wayside, and technology has passed us by quite a bit. We really don't know the latest and greatest technology in drag racing.
Yeah, and even from the beginning, we won races. We gambled. We won some races. We stood on the podium with the rest of the guys, not as often, but we did. We were always the distraction, right?
Yeah.
Like we were always the sharks that went in, and you're supposed to look at us, pay attention to us, and we're gonna try to break the ice and get you guys to do some silly races. And we were always in there to mix it up. Right. And so they didn't send us in to finish the job. Right. Like we were there to mix it up and kind of get their mind off of the prize. And so we still play that role. You know? We're still kind of the jesters of the group.
See, but that's why I like you guys. Like you guys do the interesting stuff. Like, and not to say I've seen everything, but looking around things like the farm boat and the air scream, I'm just like, it's just nuts to me, what you guys do. It seems like you guys, again, just have a lot more fun with it than you are necessarily concerned about the races at this point. But at the same time, you guys are like the face of this. You guys are celebrities on your own, in your own right. You're recognizable, especially to a certain group of people.
Sure, yeah.
What's that like living your life? I've always had, again, I told you before we start here, I'm still a little uncomfortable being in front of the camera because I've always been behind the pin. What's that like going from guys who, you know, are known by your local clubs to suddenly everyone recognizes you whenever you go to O'Reilly or what have you?
We're really only recognized in the car world. And you have to learn how to do it. You know, we've done it wrong. And it took a few years for us to learn how to do it right, because you're walking into 7-Eleven to get a cup of coffee, you know, and you've had 2 hours sleep, and all of a sudden these fans are very excited to see you. It's very difficult to shift gears and be the guy that they see on the show.
Right.
You know, you've had no sleep, and this has been going on, you know, for 2 or 3 months you've had no sleep. And anyway, we just have to learn how to do it. But that's a very important moment for us. And we also had to learn how important that moment is for them. That is their moment. That is their time. And they're going to walk away with the story that they're going to tell their friends. And it's up to us to guide them in the direction of the story that we want them to tell.
Sure.
Yeah, fame is weird, right? Like I don't think that there's enough. It's so interesting because once you start talking about fame, you start breaking that fourth wall, right? And you don't have much of that in the scripted world, in the SAG world, where, you know, these guys are, you know, the Jimmy Fallons of the world. They're part of a union, right? They're striking now, right? Because they're not getting their due, you know, what they feel like they're due. But we're not part of that world. And so it's interesting how this machine works, and we won't dive too deep into it, but they've made us famous for being on a reality television show. And I think it's different than being famous from being an athlete or being a famous doctor or a guy that, you know, created an invention, right? Like, it's like, yeah, I'm definitely famous for that. You know, I'm an astrophysicist. I'm definitely the best astrophysicist. We've got a weird type of fame. And I do think fame comes in different categories. And so I think our category of fame is developed from just being famous. I think we're famous from being famous. Yeah, we're good at racing, but
there's a word for our fame, and we're famous for being stupid.
Yeah, it's pretty much it, right? Like, I mean, so the fame to me is it only has as much value as people will place on it. Truly, right? So I don't put any value on it because I know that they made us famous, right?
Yeah.
We were already doing what we were doing. We didn't get much better at it, right? We just now displayed it in front of the world, right? And so, I don't put much, but it's cool. It's awesome to have that. And it did take a big adjustment for us to learn how to handle that.
And by the same token, I mean, obviously, like you said, it's unscripted. So there are things about your life and rivalries and things that you have done in front of you.
Yeah.
Do people ever come out and basically confront you or tell you how you should do things? Or do they stay in their lane?
Yeah, only from a fictitious standpoint. At least they see the context of what they saw. You know, they're going to see 40 minutes of 1 week's worth of work, right? And so they've already taken that out of context. And so I just lean into it, right? If they have something to say and it's important to them, lean into it and don't try to convince them otherwise, right? That what they're seeing, because there's just so much to it. Someone says, hey man, when you talk smack to so-and-so, you know, you hurt his feelings. I'm like, well, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. You know, the context is now ripped out of the whole entire reality of it. And all you saw was 3 seconds, right? And so, but you can't convince them of that.
Well, you know, for the most part, we meet fans, and we are not who we are on the show, because like Asian, all that they edit it and all they show is him cracking a joke every single time. He's the funny guy, you know? So when they meet us in person, Asian's not cracking a joke every time he says something. So it's a little skewed there.
Sure.
So,
and like you said, sometimes you just don't want to be on when you've had 2 hours of sleep and you're just getting a cup of coffee to get back to work.
Yeah.
Right.
But, and there's that danger in meeting your idols. And I've learned that over the years of talking to folks. Sometimes, they're human beings just like anyone else.
That's right.
And it was one of my first musician experiences where I got to sit down and just brought a stack of stuff for him to sign. He's like, oh my God, how much stuff you have? You realize I'm just a guy, right? And then that really sat in there with me. So every time I met someone after that meant something to me, I tried to do something a little different.
Yeah.
Arm wrestle them or do something like that to actually create a memory. And for them, it just takes it off this like random circumstance. But I hear when it comes to dealing with your fans that you guys are just amazing about it. Right. I hear that you guys have an endless line at your merch booth and you do not leave until you get everyone taken care of. And that probably feeds into your 2 hours of sleep a night.
That's not exactly true. We don't leave until the film crew comes and gets us and say, hey, we got work to do, guys. Then we leave. Yeah. So we try to get and take care of all of our fans. We go out of our way. A lot of times, we'll be back and forth to our booth, and sometimes we'll only say 10 or 15 minutes just to take care of a few more. And we can't get to them all the time, but we give it a good shot.
Fair. And did that develop from the beginning as far as this attitude, or have you kind of learned to appreciate your fans more as time has gone on? Like I said, we had to learn how to do it, but I always say we're regular guys with a cool job. Yeah. And that's all it is. That's plain and simple. That's all it is. And you guys have managed to more or less, you're your own walking brand. Like you said, you call yourself the court jesters, but you guys really just have carved out your very own niche, but you've also been very good at monetizing it as far as merchandising goes. And the other thing that I did not realize until I was doing the homework is that 405 that I see everywhere. That's your thing. Yeah. Where did that come about? And it's kind of this like sidebar to what you guys do at the same time, but it lives on. I see that thing all over town. I was traveling out of state and I saw one of those hats and I think it was Tennessee or Kentucky. Yeah. When I was up in that way. So that thing, again, I didn't realize that was also you. Sure. And it kind of has lived on. It's got a mind of its own. How did that whole brand come about?
I think that again, Farm's more the hands-on guy. He's got the creative cloud and he's pulling these ideas from it. And I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur, right? Or wanted to be, I guess. I never had the opportunity. And then my background is marketing, graphic design. And so I was doing that before the show. When the show came around, it almost just lended itself to all those things that I was just kind of putting on the shelf and like, oh, when the opportunity arises, I'm going to use this or I'm going to do this, all these ideas. Same with Farm. His ideas are now coming to life. Well, from a business perspective, so are mine. Right. And so you take that off the shelf, like, oh, I've been holding on to this idea. And then you begin to unpack. And the 405 logo was for a car dealership. And the guy never paid. Right. And so this was 5 years prior to the show. And I just sat it sitting on the file. And here's this show firing up. And, we get some advice from Richard Rawlings. We get some advice from, maybe Vanilla Ice at an upfront, or something like that. And he tells us, you guys need to do this. And so I took that advice, right? And we begin creating this brand, or what we thought was a brand. You know what you're doing at first, right? And then Farmtruck, I made him a t-shirt for his birthday. I said Farmtruck on it. He's like, we're going to sell this. I'm like, okay. And so the 405 brand, we didn't know which direction it was going to go, right? And so we just kind of created both. And 405 is more of the serious brand, I would say. It's more of the Oklahoma rooted brand that has to do with racing in the show. But the Farmtruck and AZN brand is us. You're right. Yeah, that encapsulates the that lighthearted attitude and that Midwestern get it done type of personality.
Absolutely. Well, that makes sense why you guys have the firehouse as well.
That's right.
Yeah. You guys figured out what you're doing. Well, and that makes you guys, do you guys spend much time there?
Yeah, we were there yesterday.
I was about to say, you kind of make yourselves more accessible. What's the difference in a vibe between meeting someone who like comes into your shop to try to talk to you versus who you see out on a no prep shoot?
It's probably the same. I would say it's very similar.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's very. Now, in Oklahoma, they expect us to almost be like, hey, good to see y'all, right? Like it's almost a warm welcome as opposed to them being surprised to see us, right? So, but the firehouse, man, all that stuff just happens randomly, right? Like all this stuff, farm truck, we call it farm truck luck, or we say there's magic in that hat. But there's just something about farm that he has accumulated these things, or these things find him, like the firehouse, and he's like, hey, do you want to rent this place? I'm like, okay, sure. And then 4 years later we own it, right? And so it's just kind of cool the way things develop and happen.
It's funny how all this cool stuff just keeps happening. We had a conversation about we needed a bigger shop, and then the next day I drove by the firehouse and that guy had a sign out. Well, I called, and when the guy answered the phone, I said, I'm calling about the firehouse there at 36th and Meridian. He said, I just left there. I just put that sign out. So it's just farm truck luck. That's all it is.
I like it. I like it. And speaking of, you mentioned the hat. Where'd the hat come from? It's also a signature. I love it, by the way. I think it's a cool style that only certain people can pull off.
Well, this goes way back to when I was about 20 years old. There was a guy named Randy Bond that he could build anything out of nothing. He would like make a coffee table out of a tree stump.
Yeah.
And every time I go by there, he was, doing something else. Like he found a snake in the road one time that I went by there, and he was skinning the snake so he could make a belt. So he was always doing something, and he had this old river hat, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And for my birthday, he gave me the hat. And I recently just stumbled across a picture of that. A buddy of mine sent it to me. I just showed it to Asian last week. And anyway, so I've always liked this style of hat.
Yeah.
And I wore it as a teenager. Through my 20s, and then lost it until I got the farm truck. And here we go again. I adopted it again.
Fair. Is there just one, or do you have like a closet full of these things?
Well, I have one for every season of Street Outlaws.
Oh, okay.
At the firehouse. And I'm pretty proud of that. So
awesome. Speaking of every season, it's not easy to categorize this because it's been 10 years since you guys started shooting, but there are how many seasons and offshoots of this thing that you guys have been involved in?
Yeah.
Like how many, it just seems like the volume of output you guys do that, where do you have time to be people?
This thing is blown up. Street Outlaws is definitely blown up. And it's blown up to the point where we don't even know a lot of the Street Outlaws that we see on the show. Like if we watch America's List, we don't know all those people. We might know one or two. And it's one of the largest franchises in Discovery Channel's history of spinoff shows. I think there's over 20 spinoff shows that have come. From Street Outlaws. And I'm not sure what the exact numbers are, but it's shocking to us, and it's humbling that we're a part of this thing that started here in Oklahoma, and we're proud. We're very proud that that we were here from the beginning. And there's that luck again that we talk about. We were just in the right place at the right time. And the show came along, and here we are.
But this is the first time any organization from Oklahoma. There's been some podcasters and there's been some interviews. This is the first time I consider Gazette Oklahoma. Right? When I think Oklahoma, I think
that's
Gazette,
right.
And I think so. This is the very first time that Oklahoma has actually recognized the Street Outlaw banner and what we've done in the state prior to that. And then in the past 10 years, Oklahoma hasn't really adopted the show like we thought it really would. In the beginning, there was some standoff stuff. That's expected, but we really thought they'd warm up to it and they would bring it in and ask more. Nothing. There's thunder and that's it. Right.
Right. It's the whole street racing aspect of the show that I don't think that they've they really don't want to have anything to do with us because of that. But it is a TV show and it is street racing, but it's a closed road.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're honored that you guys stepped up and said, "Hey, let's do this." And here we are. It took 10 years for it to happen, and this is great.
We're here now.
Right.
Well, I think this is kind of the format for it. As I was telling you when we were starting, I'm like, I've always loved doing the interviews a lot more than I like doing the writing. And I always feel like when I put a story out, it's accurate and things like that, but it's lost some of the flavor. Like these conversations where you get to know people, and like, especially hopefully in 10 years, I'll run into you at 7-Eleven, depending on the look in your eyes. I'll know how much sleep and how much to say. But those things where you sat and you had a conversation, you learned where someone like grew up or what it is they like to have for dinner 3 nights a week, that thing that makes them tick. And Oklahoma, we've talked about the history of the Gazette and, the history of Oklahoma culture in general. And that's it. We've got this weird kind of pride, the 405 thing.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma has a real rough time of really embracing kind of the local stuff. It's almost like it takes someone outside of that realm to really do it.
It is.
Which is weird. So it's weird that whenever you talk about, you guys have been TV stars for a decade.
Yeah.
And even still here locally, people.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like there's a layer of shame. Right. Anything Oklahoma, don't talk about that yet. It's good, but not yet. Right. Like, it's like, we didn't even, we had a couple temporary basketball teams. Right. And we don't talk about them yet. Right. Don't talk about the Hornets and the Sonics yet, and then finally we get to adopt something and, and get a winning basketball team. And now we're talking about it. But we had the rodeo. We didn't talk about that. We had all these things. We have, we have country singers. We have athletes that come out here. We don't talk about that, right? It seems like once the year's gone, we just kind of bury it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, even with the Thunder, those first few years before they were a winning team,
man,
it was just kind of, and I was like, no, guys, like,
it's a big deal.
This is the thing.
Yeah.
Like, everyone needs to be in seats.
Here.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's this weird like backwards pride, but lack of support for a lot of things.
True. Yeah.
So it hurts my feelings to hear that, you guys haven't caught on here locally or
at all.
Aren't more of a fixture.
None.
But at the same time, I get it. It's just a weird thing about this place.
Yeah.
People, go ahead.
It's such a niche because it's a car thing. And there's a limited amount of car people in every state. Every car guy, they know us. But a lot of times we can go to the mall. No one knows us at the mall, but if we go to a car show, everybody knows us.
Fair. Where are there states that are more into racing? Again, we talked about 39th Street and I always knew that was a thing here. What are the states where you are the most recognized?
I'd say Michigan, and I'm only basing this off the people that come to the firehouse.
Sure.
Most of the people that come to the firehouse to buy T-shirts and stuff, they're from around Michigan, Ohio.
East.
That's right.
Yeah.
Up there by Detroit, where all the cars started. Woodward Ave, Wisconsin, Minnesota. A lot of car people up in that area.
You would think West Coast, but it's not, the hot rodders, the street rodders, the beach boy. No, they not racing, right? Cars, sure. But using the cars, not so much. Use them for the weekend, put them away, put the wax on them. Let's hide them, guys. And it's a lot of sand, right? Like it's a lot of desert sports. It's a lot of motorsports, quad, ATV, West. Farm's right. You go further east, a little south, maybe even a little bit north, all east. It's racing. They're into it.
We get people from every single state.
Sure.
We get car guys from all the states, but it just seems like the majority of them come from around Michigan, Detroit.
All right.
Canada.
Yeah. A lot of
Canada?
Canadians.
Yeah. Oh,
sure.
yeah. Australia.
A lot of Canadians?
Oh, yeah. Brazil.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Wherever they don't allow them
England.
to do England. Yeah. It's very odd, we got to travel South Africa.
Yeah.
They're
Brazil. A lot of Brazilians.
They're so into it. it's almost like they don't get to do it. And what we do is mystical, right? Because they'll never get to do it in their country.
Fair. Do you guys take this internationally?
We recently shot a show in Australia.
Okay.
And we were there for
5 weeks?
5 weeks, yeah.
I think we did 8 or 10 episodes.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on making it back. Because all I know about Australia is they have some of the most dangerous species in the world.
Oh, yeah.
What part were you guys in?
Well, we went all over. We went
really?
East Coast, West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
It was Perth, Melbourne,
Sydney,
and the other one. There's one more.
Yeah, one more. But
Canberra.
No,
yeah,
we've been there.
That's where Summer Nets was.
Yeah, Canberra. But yeah, it's they like to participate in those things that they can't do, right? And their rules are a little tighter. But that's the one thing. It's like we go to all these different states, even just locally in the country, and Oklahoma's pretty lenient, right? Like with a lot of things. And so we go out to California, like, they don't let you do that here, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we go over to the, a little bit north, they don't let you do that here. And they're like, well, no, how do you do it in Oklahoma? I'm like, right here, we're going to race right here. Right?
Yeah.
They don't let you do that. But in Oklahoma, it's just like, they're not bothering anybody.
Yeah. Live and let live on a lot of things. That, and of course, in this state, we've all kind of just had to make our own entertainment over the years.
Yeah, I think they understand that.
Like I say, with high school kids, it's just us showing up and watching these hot rodders do their thing. And, we were talking about that as much as to the chagrin of law enforcement. It was like there was never any real major problems out there from what I remember. And honestly, running from the cops when they showed up, even if you weren't doing anything wrong or racing, was part of the fun.
Yeah, go to
part
Vegas.
Of the mystique.
Just look around at all the illegal stuff going on in Vegas, right? Right? Like, this is the show, right? Like, and so the leniency is definitely to our favor.
And I've always wondered this, as not a racer, but as a guy who's watched a couple of old movies, comes to mind 2-lane blacktop. Racing for pinks. Was that ever actually a real thing, or is that just
that's a good question.
Movie convention?
2-lane blacktop. What an awesome movie about street racing. And they come right through Oklahoma. Yeah. And on their way to the Memphis track.
Yeah.
But they street raced all the way from California all the way to Memphis. I think the pinks thing is a myth. We were on the TV show Pinks, where it was another cable network show on Speed Channel. And the guy that started it, he wasn't a car guy. He didn't know anything about cars. And he thought that people actually raced for pinks. Well, let's make a show and we'll call it Pinks. Maybe it happened. A couple of rich guys that had a lot of money.
Maybe.
And the urban legend spread from there. Who knows?
Yeah.
But most car guys are struggling to get their next meal because all their money goes in their car. And for them to take a chance on having a cricket in their carburetor, trying to get off the line and it stalls, and losing their car over that.
Yeah.
I don't think that it ever really happened.
Yeah.
Other than on 2-lane blacktop and the cable show Pinks.
Yeah. And, heck, we won 2 cars and they knew they were going to lose their cars and they still cried and fought and got mad. Right.
Really?
It's like, dude, you signed the contract. You literally signed it. You're so mad. And then they got so mad, Speed TV bought both the cars back.
Really?
Right, yeah. So, I mean, we wanted to keep it real, and it is real. You win the car, but it's up to you what you want to do with the car after that. And they were willing to write a couple good sized checks to get those cars back for those kids that needed the car back.
Did you at least take the car and take them through a drive-through?
Oh yeah, we took them, enjoyed them. Yeah, we did.
Oh yeah,
I was about to say,
it was surprising though when we went on that show and we won the car. I was like, wow, we're really gonna push this car over to our pit. Wow, we're really putting this car on our trailer. wow, we're really driving away from the track
As
with
the host.
their car on our trailer. Wow, we're on the highway heading to Oklahoma with their car on our trailer. It was a shocker. Couldn't believe it.
As the host calls us and cusses out for doing just that.
That's right.
Right? Like he's yelling at us the whole way.
We brought too fast of a car, so they said.
Yeah.
Oh.
So Hustle ruined that show.
Okay.
Hustle did, yeah.
Right.
So we were always good at that, right?
And we would never hustle
We're just
anyone
good at it. They're
out
just
of their
good
car.
at it.
Would we?
Just
Of
good at
course
it.
we wouldn't.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it was a myth. But yeah, whether it happened, never recorded, right? Documented.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question because we don't think it ever happened.
Because most people think that it happens all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what I'm saying. It's become part of this mythology.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, now I've actually got some tried and tested street races in front of me.
In fact, when people start talking about that, they're usually of the generation of when that would happen. And that's an immediate red flag that they're full of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
immediately.
Today, with all the internet and social media and all that, do you ever hear about a couple of guys racing
Even
for
today.
pinks? Even
Right.
today,
It would happen.
You don't.
Like this
You
would be
don't
the
hear about it.
perfect-
And if it happened back in the day, why wouldn't it be happening now?
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
So
just
it's
doesn't.
not happening.
And that's my thought as well. You know, these things fall into these urban myths more so than anything. Speaking of which, you know, with reality TV, how much of this is just like you guys being caught in random situations, and how many are things that, not necessarily saying it was like created for the show, but things that they highlight in and blow things up to make it seem like a bigger deal.
With
than it was.
reality,
Does that make sense?
We've never worked for another network, and we've never worked for another production company, so we can't answer that in terms of a generality.
Sure.
But they let us do what we wanted to do. Now, sometimes we did some stuff that we're like, maybe we shouldn't have done that, right? Like, and we were just allowed to be goofy.
There's plenty of those.
Yeah, don't give us the free reign all the time, right? Because we did do some stupid shit, but that don't pertain to racing, right? And didn't turn out the way we thought they were going to turn out. But at the end of the day, man, they didn't really, they can suggest, and they did suggest, and sometimes we took their advice out of respect. But for the most part, man, they never told us what to do ever. In fact, I'm not sure if they're even allowed to do that. Typically, once they begin to do that, you're SAG now, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so you got to fill out a 1099 and a W-2 and, you know, submit all that. And they never wrote us a script unless we didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Quick story. It was February 1 of 13. That was the first day that we filmed, and our producer showed up and said, I think we're going to go play paintball today. And we said, we don't play paintball. We street race. And the last I knew, this is a show about street racing. We're going to Route 66 and we're going to find some street races and we're going to get into them. And they were like, you're going to do that? And we're like, yeah, that's what we do. So follow us. And ever since then, they've been letting us lead and doing what we want to do.
Yeah. You know, okay, that makes sense. Because also, I remember watching some of the first season. Again, I was a crime writer for the Oklahoman at the time. So I was always like, how much of this is going to be, you know, that culture? And I'm always a skeptic about everything. So I'm like, oh, let's see if I can watch this and see how much of it's bullshit.
Yeah.
But I remember watching that and being like, no, this is...
Yeah.
You know, pretty straightforward and not as like dangerous or crazy as
Some
it
of
sounded
some
from
of
the
it
outside.
we would never do again. Yeah. Some of it. Yeah.
Right. There were some times where we were like, hey, we'd call a buddy. Do you know anyone that wants to race? Have them meet us out. You know, we'll be cruising 39th and we'll meet up. And that's the way it happened. There's a little bit that's set up that way.
Yeah. But what isn't?
But for the most part, when we meet these people, there's no script. There's no anything. We don't know if they want to race for money or not. And we just let it happen the way it happens.
Yeah, it's no more set up than this. Saying, hey, you want to meet at this address and have a conversation? Right.
Yeah,
like
that's
it's no more set up. Like, hey, you guys, we'd call, like if I'm saying, we'd call our buddy and say, hey, man, they're going to film us racing. Do you mind? Do you want to come out to 39th and bring a couple of your friends? But we'll see. Some of it might make it. Some of it might not. And they're like, sure. Now, what makes it seem, I'll tell you what makes it seem when you're watching the show and you're like, oh man, this ain't real. You've got a bunch of people that don't know how to act on camera.
Yeah.
Right. And immediately your red flags go off and say, this guy is talking noise. He doesn't know what he's saying. They're nervous. Right. And so here's us. We're kind of leaning into it, trying to help them out. And they're just folding. Right. And they got to show what they got. Right. And so when you're watching, you're like, oh man, that guy just doesn't act right. Or, the race didn't, or they blew the tires off and we smoke them. It's because they're nervous, man. So I think in the beginning, man, 90% of the time we won our races and it looks so off-putting is because those guys weren't ready.
Sure.
Right. And we were.
But to me, that's more evidence that it's not scripted.
That's right.
These people don't know how to act because they're not acting.
Well, it's camera shock. You get these cameras in your face and you get nervous. It's fish out of water. It's not your element. And anyone that races should be nervous. If they're not, maybe they shouldn't be racing. But whenever the cameras come out, it's even another height of being nervous.
Yeah. And we use that to our advantage, right? That's a part of the hustle, right? It's like, okay, you bring a camera guy over because you become friends with these people, Clark, you're like, hey, bring the camera over here. We're going to get in this guy. I'm like, hey, you want to bet $100? And then you start getting into them and leaning into that. And like, you're going to tell the world that you ain't going to bet $100 on your buddy? Like, deal. All right. Right. And then they fold. Right. And so we've always used that as a bit of our advantage as the wall that's kind of been behind us.
Almost some carny antics.
Yeah.
Where you're barking, insult, clown, fighting. Exactly. I grew up on that stuff. I'm not talking trash on it. I enjoy it. There is something to a carnival barker that I always enjoy. I just like standing up there.
It's putting the pressure on. And if they give up, we'll move on to the next.
Absolutely. These people walking by on the sidewalk, it's your job to get them in, right?
High and dry, need a ball player.
Exactly. Right? Same thing. It's like, we need someone to race. We've decided it's you.
Guy back.
Absolutely. Yep. So you mentioned day one of production, they're talking about doing paintball. So it seemed like you already kind of started not at odds, but maybe they didn't understand what you were about.
Well, I think a lot of reality TV shows, they get a show, they don't know what to do. They're not prepared. We talked about it, and I don't know, about 6 months later, the contracts show up, and then about 2 months later, they show up to film. Well, we had a lot of time to think about what we wanted to do and how we were going to act, and we had put a lot of thought into it. And Asian and I we think outside the box. So we fortunately, we had time to think about what we wanted to do. And we wanted to capture, in essence, what we do. And that's exactly what we do. So did you approach them or they approach you? I was always curious about the genesis of this show. Okay. Well, they have scouts that scour the internet and look for people that are interesting enough to maybe make a reality show. They got a hold of us, and I say, we owe a lot of debt to these people because they saw something in us that we never saw. If it wasn't for Sam and Jen, our production people, we'd still be racing in some industrial park somewhere.
Sure.
So we owe a debt of gratitude to them for that.
And they keep it flowing. They saw something again. The farm saying they put all this into one box, and they're like, all right, you can talk, you can talk, you can talk. You guys can't talk. You better be good at what you do, but you can't talk, right? And so they bring all the people that can talk forward, and like, all right, you guys just go. For the first season, it's just it's freshman year of high school, right? Like, and so you're figuring out who you are and who's going to be popular. Second season comes around, and then they begin making you famous, right? At that point, it's the chemicals start aligning, and then they're like, all right, we're going to put these pieces in place. You're now the host. You're now the bad guy. You're the good guy. You're the antics guys, and then they make it work. But I really am not so sure. The whole it's not a myth, but the whole I'm going to pitch a television show.
Right.
I don't think that's a real thing. I don't know of anybody, maybe other than Rich Christensen from Pinks, that actually did that and was successful. Most shows have
Richard Rawlings did.
Richard Rawlings?
But he had the money.
Yeah.
And he hired a film crew. He had an idea about a show.
Yeah.
And he filmed it out of his pocket.
Yeah.
And then Discovery bought it. He got lucky. That's very, very rare.
Less than 1%. And so the whole, I'm going to pitch I got a television show. Good luck, buddy. Man, you better be so motivated and so obsessed with making a reality that you've already failed and attempted this multiple times, right? Because Richard did. Richard had 3 attempts and failures right before Gas Monkey actually hit. And so I don't know if the whole pitching a show thing works anymore. And I think it's mostly showrunners. And with the way television's going now, who knows where it goes? It's kind of the new newspaper. Right. Yeah. I really think that they've got everything in their own wheelhouse. I don't think you can just walk into a studio and pitch a show anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned newspapers. It seems like culture has gone from like a digest format, like you have a reporter there to get the facts, throw it all together, or you have a movie, a documentary, and then now that's blasted out into reality series. And a lot of journalism now comes down to, or interview journalism comes down to podcasts where you're not limited by commercial breaks. You're not limited by inch counts and things like that. So in a weird way, it seems like the culture is getting more expansive. And so I guess that's my question to you of all the hundreds of hours that you have been on camera, do you feel like you as people and your stories are accurately portrayed? Or, and I don't mean this as a slight against the production company, but it's just very hard to get to the essence of who people are. And so do you think reality TV is a fitting format for that, in the same way that I think these interviews are better journalism than a lot of the news stories have written?
You know, I think they can, with editing, they can make you who they want you to be. You know, Asian's the funny guy. Every time they show him, he's cracking a joke. And if you're a jerk, and you make all these snide comments, that's all they're going to show. They can make you a jerk, even though you're really not. They can definitely steer you as a character. With good editing.
I would say it's enough, right? Like your question is basically, do we feel as though we are portrayed as we would like to be? Not entirely, but I don't think people care, right? I really don't. I think what it comes down to is if someone wants to know who you are, they will ask the right questions. Outside of that, whatever palette they have in front of them is what they're going to use. And so it's enough, right? In terms of what they've portrayed about us. And I think that they've shown that we care about other people. We have empathy, right? I think they've shown that we're into cars. I think they show that we have a sense of humor. Outside of that, man, if people want to know more, they can ask those good questions.
Yeah.
I think they've showed that we're regular guys. You know, we're regular guys with a cool job. That's all it is.
That's fair. You know, whenever I do a profile, I'm really excited about. I meet people I really enjoy their company or respect. I sweat bullets when that story comes out. I don't text them, and I feel like sometimes they think it's because I don't care, but I'm just like so worried that they're going to hate it.
What do you mean?
Whenever I publish a story, and I wait to get that text of, oh man, that was great. And I'm like, did I get it right?
Oh, okay.
Does it feel right to you? And so that's where that question is born from.
Understood.
It's like, to me, trying to portray people accurately. This makes this so much easier because we just got all of the bullshit. We just sit here and have a conversation, and what you see is what you get.
You're
because we're not editing this into a narrative. The narrative is us having this conversation. And so in a way it feels like cheating still to me. But I feel like, you know, I don't think this conversation would have been much different. The things we were talking about before we went on camera and the things after we started shooting really just haven't changed much. And so that's what I love about the show, and why we've gone with Everyone Has a Story, because you can just sit here and have a conversation with anyone. And whether it's their passion currently or just where they came from, there's always something to talk about and always some sort of middle ground to find with folks. You know, if there was some sort of lesson or moral that you guys would have hoped people would have gleaned from you as characters, but also as people via this show, what do you think it'd be?
Oh man, I think that it's so important. I mean, I don't know. We don't want to get too philosophical, but I think it's so important to realize that you got to give to get, right? And so a lot of what we've done here is giving, right? We've done a lot of behind the scenes giving to be able to move forward, and you got to be able to give what you want to receive, right? And so we put a lot of hard work into this, and a lot of it's paid off. I think that what people don't see is the mental strain this takes, right? To do any of this. Yeah, the hard work, you see us joking around, you see us doing nothing, you see us racing the cars, just being stupid. Man, there's so much behind the scenes hard work that it takes to just put that risk forward, right? A lot of failures. There's so many failures, right?
Yeah.
I think that you better love what you do and be obsessed with what you're doing in all shapes and forms, or you're just not. Pick something else if you're not. This is a lot, and you have to give up a lot to be able to be successful in anything that you want to do.
Yeah. I don't know. We always say we had to be smart enough to say yes. And then we had to be dumb enough to keep doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Do you think that, 10 years is a long time. So you're dealing with kids now who were children.
That's what they say.
When they started watching this, and now they're driving a building.
We got these teenagers coming up, and they're driving cars and race cars, and they said, I grew up watching
What?
you.
Don't say that.
You grew up. No, you didn't. You're a man. How could you have done that? It's just unbelievable to us. It's all those are pinch me moments.
Yeah. You start gauging your life. I do the same thing. Yeah. I'm like, what was I doing in that time of my life? And I have to look back at stories I wrote. And I'm like, oh, this is what's going on. Do you guys ever go back and just for the hell of it, watch old episodes of yourself?
I can't yet. No, I can't yet.
We're really not into watching us.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe someday, I don't know, but
it's a lot of mistakes, man. You start looking back, you didn't do anything right. You start looking back like, whoa, what was I thinking?
No one is more critical of you than you.
Yeah.
But when we have fans come up and, they have tears in their eyes, you guys are awesome. My dad had a truck like that, and I had a Volkswagen, and they have this passion and they want to tell their story. We know that we've done a pretty good job, so we try not to listen to us whenever it comes to being critical of, watching the show. Yeah.
And, the weird thing, and there might be the same with other industries or careers, but the weird thing with television is it really expedited our lives, right? Like it really pushed it fast forwarded everything. So anything that was good that was going to happened within a shorter time frame. Anything that was bad that was going to happened within a shorter time frame. I can tell you probably, 90% of the cast ended up breaking up or getting a divorce or made their relationship stronger, right? Like either way, one was going to happen. And the show just really just fast forwarded it all. And I don't know what science there is to that, but it's interesting how television begins to propel something and really expedite the process.
Well, you hear about all of the breakups in Hollywood.
Right.
And in order to be successful at your career, you have to obsess. And when you obsess over your career, something's going to suffer. It's going to be your personal relationships. And that's why there's so many breakups, and it's so difficult to do. And that's why not too many people keep doing it if they do get the opportunity, because it's just hard on families and you trying to obsess over your career, and you're going to try to find the balance of what's really important.
Right.
Is it your job, making money? Is it a TV show? Or is it your, wife and kids and your family?
What was that movie with Richard Dreyfuss, The Close Encounters of is it the Third Kind?
I think
when
so.
He's starting to make the mountain out of mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
That's us for 10 years.
Yeah.
You're like, what are you doing? Like, I got the Devil's Tower out of mashed potatoes.
Yeah, going from, I I remember that scene. That was one of those that I had to go back as an adult. Because I remember I was like, what was that scene even about? I know why it's in my head.
Obsession, right? Like,
right.
right? Like, that was it.
What's it like taking a passion and turning it into a job for this long? Do you still, like you said, you end up sacrificing things for it?
That's right. The downfall to Street Outlaws is it ruined our hobby. Everyone knows the truck now. It's hard to get a race. And there's no time for us to go out and have that kind of fun because we're always filming, we're always working. I was a carpenter before, and on the weekends, we'd take the truck out and race it and have a good time. So I don't really have a hobby anymore. I just have a job that takes 100 hours a week.
And that's what I was about to say. Yeah. It seems like this takes an enormous amount of not only just time, but emotional investment, mental energy.
Yeah, you know it very well at a certain point, right? Like you just know it very well. And I think it knocks the new off it. Like I would love to like talk to a musician, like someone that's just a freaking like top tier musician and ask them truthfully, because no one ever asks, are you sick of this shit? Right? Like, are you sick of singing that damn song? Right? Like, are you? It's like, and I want to ask those questions behind closed doors when there's no mic on them, and because it's got to have knocked the new off a little bit, right? Like not at all, because you guys are doing a great job of acting like it's not. Right. But, they're still doing it and they're not doing it for free. Right. So you wonder how much of them love it or what part they love and what part they wish they could do without. There's all of that with what we do, but it's knocked the new off. So we know how to do it already. So we begin seeking things that we haven't done within the industry that we can learn more about. I think that's the quickest answer for that.
And I'm glad you said that because I have asked several musicians that. Yeah, I'll tell you off camera what they said.
Okay, please. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's not, honestly, most of them are just very humbled and thankful. They're like, this gave me my life.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing you guys have talked about. It's like this has changed the direction of things. But at the other token, it may have accelerated things that you didn't want to go by so quickly or taking things in different directions. But such is the nature of life, right?
It is. So, when you see, Clint Black on the billboard, and does he want to do that?
Right.
Does he want to do it again? I don't know. Right. Because that's 30 years. Right. You take what we did times 3. Right. And does he want to keep doing that?
And you guys get to do new and different things.
We
do. You get to move around, like you guys are hitting the road again here shortly, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And versus someone who just sits there and has to play the same notes.
They got to grind.
And sing the same
Can they do it?
Words every night.
They got to be built different, right? They got to be built different.
I know.
I don't know.
I know. It's wild. Speaking of which, where are you guys heading next?
Oh, we're going to Colorado.
I'm jealous.
It's going to be Vegas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan. We're going to North Carolina, Alabama, and then Ennis. That'll be the last one.
Yeah. So that's the tour.
Do you guys have an off season?
Yeah. Winter usually.
Yeah, okay. But then they send us to Australia.
Right, yeah. Usually we build stuff in the winter.
Yeah.
So.
Any hint at special projects that you guys are putting out? Like I say, you guys build some of the craziest stuff.
Well, we have plenty of ideas, but we're doing all this no prep stuff and locals only. We don't have time to work on anything. So hopefully this winter we can get some good projects going.
Well, fantastic. And hopefully you guys will have time in your schedule and things will be progressing well here. Have you guys back on and talk about it.
Right.
Thank you guys.
So you're a writer, is that correct?
That's one way of putting it. Yes.
Shouldn't you be on strike right now?
Well, again, as these folks write scripted things.
Okay. Yeah.
Your news.
We're way off script. Yeah.
Okay.
We're news. We just roll with the punches.
Okay.
So cool. Now I'm not crossing any picket lines by being here with you guys. Well, again, I appreciate you guys showing up.
For sure.
Hopefully we can do it again very soon.
Yeah, sure, man. Let's keep in touch.
For sure.
Yep.
Thank you. Take care.